Deep beneath the forest floor in the heart of Lower Saxony, Germany, archaeologists have stumbled upon a discovery that is turning the story of Neanderthals on its head. Buried under layers of ancient soil and sediment lay the remains of what researchers now call a fat factory, a site that reveals just how resourceful our prehistoric cousins really were. At first glance, the idea of Neanderthals running what amounts to an ancient processing plant for animal fat sounds almost unbelievable. Yet the evidence tells a story that is as fascinating as it is unexpected. This place, now dated to around 125,000 years ago, shows signs of deliberate butchering, systematic storage, and large-scale rendering of fat from hunted animals. But why would Neanderthals go to such lengths? Fat was more than just a meal. In the harsh, unforgiving climate of the Ice Age, fat was the gold standard of survival. A single well-preserved supply could mean the difference between life and death during the brutal winter months when hunting was scarce and temperatures dropped dangerously low. This newly unearthed site paints a vivid picture of Neanderthals not as wandering brutes, but as skilled planners, capable of organizing their communities to secure and store vital nutrients for the long term. This discovery challenges long-held assumptions about how advanced Neanderthals really were. Were they truly that different from early Homo sapiens? Or did they share more of our clever survival instincts than we ever imagined? In the coming moments, we'll dig deeper into what this fat factory reveals about their daily lives. We'll explore surprising case studies, look at similar sites around the world, and examine the controversies that now divide the archaeological community. This is the story of how one ancient site is rewriting our understanding of survival, adaptation, and the ingenious ways our ancient relatives thrived in a world that demanded more than just brute strength. Hidden beneath the soil of Lower Saxony, the story of the so-called fat factory began when a team of archaeologists set out to explore an unassuming patch of woodland in Lower Saxony, a region in northern Germany already known for its ancient secrets. This particular dig site, nestled between rolling fields and dense forest, seemed at first no different from countless other excavation spots scattered across Europe. But as the researchers dug deeper, the earth began to reveal an extraordinary glimpse into a world that existed over 125,000 years ago. It was a joint effort between local German archaeologists and international researchers who had long suspected that the area might hide traces of prehistoric life. What they found was far more complex than a simple hunting camp. Layer by layer, the team uncovered a wealth of animal bones, many showing clear signs of precise cuts and deliberate breakage. Large game such as reindeer, horse, and bison were all represented, suggesting that Neanderthals weren't merely opportunistic hunters, they were organized and selective in what they brought back to this spot. The ground was also rich with stone tools, some sharpened to slice through thick hide and muscle, others designed to crush bones and extract the prized marrow hidden inside. Residue analysis revealed traces of animal fat embedded in the soil, as if the earth itself had absorbed centuries of prehistoric processing. These residues are more than just faint chemical ghosts. They are the fingerprints of an industry, a sign that these early humans returned to this same place repeatedly, using it as a reliable base for large-scale fat rendering and storage. Scientists pieced together the evidence like detectives at a cold case crime scene. They believe Neanderthals butchered the animals on site, rendering fat by heating bones and tissues, then storing the valuable grease in hides or primitive containers for the leaner months ahead. This kind of planning implies a community that understood how to survive not just day to day but across seasons when food would be impossible to hunt. When news of the discovery first reached the broader archaeological community, reactions ranged from awe to skepticism. Some researchers hailed it as one of the clearest signs yet that Neanderthals were far more sophisticated than the brutish stereotype suggests. Others argued that while the site shows evidence of repeated use, calling it a factory might be an overstatement. Yet the sheer volume of remains and the repeated layers of residues left little doubt that this was not an isolated event. This was organized activity, a place where families worked together to transform dangerous hunts into life-sustaining stores of energy. For the people who worked here under the dark canopy of ancient pines, survival depended on more than just strength. It demanded ingenuity, cooperation, and an understanding of nature's harsh cycles. Fat, the gold of the Ice Age. Long before modern humans learned to farm or domesticate animals, survival depended on nature's unpredictable bounty. During the Ice Age, calories were everything. The cold sapped energy quickly, and lean meat alone wasn't enough to sustain a family through bitter winds and endless snow. Fat was the real treasure, the prehistoric equivalent of gold, dense, rich, and absolutely vital for life in a world ruled by ice and scarcity. Unlike lean cuts of meat, animal fat packed more than double the calories. For Neanderthals living in harsh European climates, every bit of rendered fat could be the difference between making it through a brutal winter or succumbing to starvation. Fat fueled their bodies, kept fires burning longer, and even served as a source of light when used in primitive lamps. It was more than food, it was a currency for survival. Many people imagine prehistoric humans as constantly on the move, hunting what they could and living hand to mouth. But discoveries like this fat factory challenge that idea. They show how resourceful our ancient cousins really were. They didn't just chase herds, they planned, they gathered, and they processed. They turned every part of the animal into something useful, especially the parts that would store well and deliver the most energy when needed most. Other prehistoric cultures also understood the value of fat. In North America, indigenous tribes organized massive bison hunts that yielded not just meat but gallons of rendered fat to be stored as pemmican, a powerful, calorie-rich survival food that could last for months. In the Arctic, traditional Inuit diets revolve around fat-rich marine mammals because plants and carbohydrates are scarce. These parallels help us see how the need for concentrated calories shaped human behavior across continents and eras. By studying the residues and butcher marks found at the site in Germany, researchers now realize just how deeply Neanderthals depended on these hidden reserves. Fat was a buffer against famine, a safeguard when hunting failed or weather turned deadly. It was a survival strategy as crucial as the tools they carried or the caves they called home. This newfound understanding adds a new layer to the picture of Neanderthals, not as primitive brutes, but as master survivalists who knew the land and its secrets better than we ever gave them credit for. Inside the minds of early humans, what this remarkable site in Lower Saxony reveals is not just a glimpse of what Neanderthals ate but how they thought. To maintain a fat processing hub of this scale, Neanderthals had to work together with a level of organization that many once believed they lacked. When people hear the term Neanderthal, they often imagine isolated hunters, moving constantly with small family groups, living day by day. But the layers of butchered bones, the residues of fat, and the pattern of tools found all tell a different story. This was not the chaotic scattering of random kills. This was a systematic effort that needed cooperation, planning, and a deep understanding of the seasons. Archaeologists studying the site have pointed out how the cut marks on the bones reveal more than just butchery. They show a deliberate method for maximizing every calorie. Bones were split to reach the marrow, tendons were separated cleanly, and chunks of fat-rich tissue were carefully removed and likely rendered over controlled fires. None of this happens without teamwork. It suggests roles within the group: skilled hunters bringing in game, others tasked with breaking down carcasses, and perhaps elders teaching the young which tools to use and how to extract every ounce of life-sustaining fat. Comparisons to other Neanderthal sites strengthen this image of collective effort. In Belgium, for example, caves have been found with layers of bones that also show organized butchering and evidence of repeated seasonal use. In France, the renowned site at La Côte de Saint-Brelard on Jersey Island revealed that Neanderthals drove mammoths and woolly rhinoceros over cliffs in coordinated hunts, showing that these people knew how to plan and execute complex group activities to secure enough resources for survival. The tools found at the Fat Factory site speak volumes about their technological skill. Flint blades were honed to sharpness, perfect for slicing through thick hides. Hammerstones and anvils show that they smashed bones open in specific ways, not just to get marrow but to extract every scrap of nutrient-rich fat clinging to the inside. These weren't crude improvisations. They were tried and true methods, passed down through generations, adapted to the harsh realities of life on the edge of survival. It becomes clear that Neanderthal life was not defined solely by the chase but by what happened after the hunt. The organized breakdown of prey, the systematic rendering of fat, and the likely storage in skins or bladders all point to a community that understood how to prepare for the future. It wasn't just survival, it was strategy. Each step reveals a mind capable of looking beyond today's meal to tomorrow's hunger, proving that the line between us and them may not be as sharp as once thought. Was this an isolated case? The idea of Neanderthals operating a fat processing hub sounds revolutionary, but when you look across the world's ancient landscapes, you find that they were not alone in their resourceful ways. Prehistoric butchering sites and ancient fat processing pits have been discovered on nearly every continent where early humans roamed. Each one adds to the growing evidence that our ancestors, and even our cousins like the Neanderthals, understood how to turn unpredictable hunting into reliable stores of energy. One striking example comes from the vast plains of North America, where indigenous tribes mastered the bison jump. These sites, like the famous head-smashed in buffalo jump in Canada, show how groups drove entire herds over cliffs to secure massive amounts of meat and fat at once. After the hunt, families worked for days or weeks, cutting, drying, and rendering fat into pemmican, a dense, portable food that could sustain them through the harshest seasons. Just like the Neanderthals, they relied on bone marrow and rendered fat as the most valuable prize nature could offer. In Australia, Aboriginal communities developed their own fat preservation strategies. Kangaroos, prized for their rich tails, were hunted in organized drives. The tail fat was cooked down and stored, sometimes mixed with other ingredients, providing vital calories in regions where plant-based fats were scarce. These ancient practices show that people understood the science of nutrition long before anyone put it on paper. They knew instinctively that fat meant warmth, strength, and survival when the landscape turned against them. Archaeologists also point to other sites in Europe that echo the same pattern seen in Lower Saxony. In Poland and the Czech Republic, dig sites reveal butchered remains with clear signs of marrow extraction and fat rendering, suggesting that Ice Age communities were not just opportunistic but highly systematic. These places are often found near reliable water sources and along migration paths of big game animals, perfectly positioned for repeated use as seasonal fat factories. These examples remind us that the so-called fat factory in Germany is not just a fascinating oddity. It's part of a larger pattern of human ingenuity that stretches across continents and millennia. When we think about how our ancestors survived, it's easy to focus on the drama of the hunt, the clash between human and beast. But the real secret often lay in what they did after the kill, how they processed, preserved, and stored the most precious parts of the animal. This global perspective on ancient fat processing connects us to people whose lives were unimaginably different yet driven by the same basic need: to survive when nature offered no guarantees. The residues left behind, the cut marks on bones, the piles of fractured marrow-filled limbs, they're not just relics. They are whispers of a time when survival was both art and science, carried out by hands that knew exactly what it took to make it through the long dark of an unforgiving world. Debate among archaeologists. Even as this discovery in Lower Saxony captures the world's imagination, not everyone agrees on exactly what it means. Some scientists argue that calling it a fat factory might be stretching the evidence too far. They suggest that the site could have been seasonal, used only during certain times of the year when large game was plentiful. These experts point to patterns in the bone layers that hint at periodic use rather than permanent settlement. Yet others insist this is precisely what makes the find so remarkable. They argue that the scale and repetition suggest an organized cultural practice far beyond random butchering. Dr. Will Robrooks, a leading researcher in European prehistory, has noted in published papers that the residues and cut marks form a clear pattern of systematic fat processing. This hints at a more sophisticated Neanderthal culture than once believed. This debate cuts to the heart of how we understand early human diets. Was this clever adaptation the norm for Ice Age people, or was it a sign that Neanderthals were closer to modern humans in planning and social cooperation than we ever realized? The controversy continues to inspire new digs and fresh analysis, ensuring that the story of this ancient fat factory is far from finished. What this tells us about us. Comparing the ingenuity behind this Neanderthal fat factory to what we know about early Homo sapiens sparks fascinating questions. Did fat storage give modern humans an advantage that helped them outlast their Neanderthal cousins? Many researchers believe the answer might be yes. Early Homo sapiens in colder climates also relied heavily on animal fat, using advanced tools and social networks to process and share these vital resources. Recent genetic studies reveal that Neanderthals and modern humans interbred more often than once thought, passing survival traits back and forth. This mix of genes might explain why some human populations today still show adaptations for cold weather and fat metabolism. When we look at these ancient practices side by side, we see that both groups used fat not just as food but as an insurance policy against the harshest conditions. In the end, discoveries like this remind us that the survival game wasn't about who was strongest or smartest in isolation. It was about who could cooperate, plan ahead, and make the most of nature's limited gifts. That same spirit of adaptation and resourcefulness lives on in us today, connecting us to a world long buried beneath the soil. This discovery deep under the forests of Lower Saxony reshapes our ideas about how ancient humans survived and thrived. The so-called fat factory stands as a powerful reminder that Neanderthals were not just wandering hunters but skilled planners who could organize and prepare for lean times with remarkable foresight. It challenges us to see our prehistoric cousins not as primitive but as adaptive and innovative, capable of transforming the resources around them into reliable survival strategies. Perhaps the biggest question this find leaves us with is what else remains hidden under layers of earth and time. If this single site reveals so much about how these people lived, what other secrets lie waiting to be uncovered? What more could we learn about the bond between community, ingenuity, and survival? As you think about this ancient story, imagine the flicker of firelight on bone and stone tools, the quiet determination of hands working together to turn a single hunt into months of precious life. It's a glimpse into a world that still echoes in our DNA today. If you enjoyed this journey into our prehistoric past, remember to like this video, subscribe for more discoveries, and join us as we unearth the forgotten chapters of human evolution one story at a time.